What's up everyone, RAFX here. Today I'm going to show you how to have high quality recordings on OBS going at 1080p 60 frames per second. This tutorial is going to pretty much show you how to do that, as well as having lower CPU usage and as well as having a smaller file size. So let's get started. First, you want to create a profile. I just have mine called YouTube. It's gonna contain all my local recordings and prepare it for posting on YouTube. So go to your settings. Now go to encoding. Now you should see three of these four encoders here. One of them is in beta. The first one here is X264. It should work for Intel and AMD processors. It's pretty much universal encoder, but that uses a lot of CPU usage. But yeah, and then you have QuickSync, which is for Intel CPUs. Not all of them use this, but if you have it have it there, that means you should be able to use it if you want to. That uses a pretty low CPU usage when you have that checked, but that usually varies. Sometimes the quality looks kind of bad for some, sometimes it looks good for others. It depends. I would suggest if you have an Intel integrated CPU, might check that out. If not, most people will be using X264 for this. It's usually the best, unless you have a NVIDIA NVENC graphics card. If you have that, I highly recommend you check that. That's if you don't have like a super high quality game running. You might want to switch between X264 and that, just depending on how high quality your game is, so you're not swallowing up your graphics card for your encoding rather than your game there. So yeah, I highly recommend you use that if you have a NVIDIA graphics card. So it will suck up less CPU usage. Sometimes it'll use, instead of using like maybe 50 or 60% CPU usage for 1080p 60 frames per second, this will probably push it down to between 10 or maybe 30. So half or way less than half. So yeah, it'll make a big difference if you have that checked. But just, you might want to play around with it depending on how high quality the game you're playing is on the computer. As far as consoles, then have that checked for sure if you have a NVIDIA graphics card. And then here is the AMD VCE. This is for AMD graphics cards. This is in beta. I'll show you how to get this in another video. But if you have an AMD graphics card, have that checked for sure. It's pretty much the same as I explained with the NVIDIA one. So depending on if your game is high quality, you might want to mess around with this and X264, just so you know it doesn't suck up whatever's going on with your game. So yeah, if you have a console, you definitely want to have this checked for sure. So it's using really just less CPU usage overall. And then for UCBR, that's constant bitrate. We aren't going on a constant bitrate here, so you want to have that unchecked. And then quality balance, we want to have this at 10, so our motion and everything is like awesome. As far as max bit rate, you want to have it at 1,000, and then I'm sure some of you are going, "What the heck? Are you? What are you trying to do? That's gonna look terrible." Well, we're gonna have a a fluctuating bit rate here, so it could go in between 500, as low as 500 bit rate, to as large as 60,000 bit rate. So this will lead to smaller file sizes. Instead of running, let's say 30,000, it's going to be constantly running at 30,000, even if you have it at say a pause screen where nothing's happening. Let's just put that for an example, and that file size is going to keep growing and growing on that pause screen. Well, for this, when you go to that pause screen, since there's no motion happening, it'll probably dip down to maybe 500, as I said. So that'll help lead to a smaller file size. And it'll go by whatever motion's happening on the screen. Like I have some videos of Destiny and some other games, like some first-person shooters. And well, that one goes at 30 frames per second, but that ran around like 20,000 kilobits per second, and yeah. But then I popped in something like Sonic Generations, and since that has so much motion going on, that actually hit up to 60,000 bit rate, because I was just going in boost mode and everything was just flying past. So yeah, this will help to leading to a really high quality video, and it'll just use what's needed and to just create a beautiful video and always look amazing. So I'll explain how this works more later. It's going to be in the Advanced tab. And then right here for Use Custom Buffer Size, you want to have this checked. And then Buffer Size, you just want to have it 0 for this. Then for audio encoding, you want to have it AAC, but you could have it MP3 as well. But if you want, and have it 44.1 kilohertz. But for me, I have it at AAC 48 kilohertz. I have some monitor speakers, some high quality speakers on my computer, and I could tell the difference between 48 and 44. And then for bitrate, I have it at 320, which is the highest quality. And then stereo, which, yeah, you need it at stereo. Let's go to broadcast settings. You want to have it file output only, and then put whatever file path it is you want it to go. Some of you have it automatically goes to FLV, I believe. You could set it to MP4 as if you want to. Now let's go to video. Set it to whatever your monitor is being displayed from. So I have it displayed from my graphics card, my AMD Radeon R9 290 series. Yeah, just have it selected there. And then base resolution, whatever resolution your monitor is, put it at that, as well as its aspect ratio. And then resolution downscale, just have it at 1920 by 1080. The only time you want to mess with this is maybe the game you have is 720p, or maybe you're capturing in 720p only. So that's the only time you kind of want to mess with it, so you have a smaller file size. But the Xbox 360 has a pretty good upscaler on it, so I have it at 1920 by 1080. But if you're playing at like something like the Wii, let's put that out there, then that is when you want to put it at 480. So yeah. As far as FPS, you want to put this at whatever the game is running at. So I would check into that. If the game is running at 60, put it at 60. If it's running at 30, put it at 30. If you're kind of wondering, wait a minute, why don't I put it at 60 so then that 30 frames per second video will look better? No, that's not what's going to happen. It's going to record what it sees. So all it's going to do is say, all you're doing is telling the program, hey, get ready for 60 frames per second and get ready to capture it. Well, all that's going to do is lead to a larger file size, and it's not going to capture 60 frames per second. It's pretty much mirroring what it's seeing from your console or your PC. So set it to whatever the game is running at. So you will be left with the right file size. So yeah. As far as audio, just have it to whatever you have it at. Now for general, use multi-threaded optimizations. What this doesn't mean hyper-threading like the Core i7s have, as well as some others as well. This just means, as far as what the OBS setup page says, it just means multi-core processors. So if you have something above a one-core processor, meaning if you have something like dual-core and up, you should have this checked for sure. I have no idea how you would even record with the single-core processor. I'm not sure if that's even possible. And then for priority class, I just have it set to normal. If you have a game running on the same PC, you might want to keep it at normal as well. But if you have it, if you're recording from another PC or a console, you might want to put it at high. That's depending on if this is only, if this computer is being used only as a recording device at the time. So yeah, you could put it at high. And I just put it normal because I have like a media center and stuff like running at the same time. So I just put it at normal. Screen buffering time, I just have it at 700. You could put that lower if you want. I never really noticed much of a difference as far as that goes. But yeah. As for video, X264 CPU present, I just have it at ultra fast. So pretty much the lower you go, the more CPU it's gonna use. So you have to have a pretty strong CPU to keep going up like this. So like even my computer is a Core i5 4690K, and it could just barely go to faster at most. But that's really not at 60 frames per second. That's usually going at 720, 30 frames per second. I could just barely hit faster. So I really never noticed any difference here. I just have it on ultra fast. It works just fine for my processor, and it uses less processing power as well. Since I have multiple instances of OBS running, basically I have multiple windows. One I use for local recordings, like I'm showing you here, and then one's for streaming, and then one's for my microphone and sometimes my webcam as well. Um, uh, yeah, so I'll show you how to do that in another video. It'll probably be called like how to open OBS in multiple windows or instances, and then I'll have my streaming settings in another video. So I have pretty much have to have it at ultra fast, and I keep clicking that. So yeah, so if you have one instance and you're using a pretty much high quality, I highly recommend go to very fast. And then encoding profile, put it at high. You can put it at main. I really never noticed a difference in that. And then keyframe interval, put it at 0 auto. Some people put it at 2. I never noticed real difference. Pretty much. So for this, you want to have this check for sure. Use CFR. This will pretty much have it at a constant frame rate. You don't want it at a variable frame rate, because when that happens is some editing programs will not be able to read it. So I have Adobe Premiere Pro here, which is a editing software, and then I have my game recordings, and here's a game recording that I didn't have CFR checked, and well, it just reads it as a audio file. Like I put it over here, there's nothing here. Like you could kind of see that there's audio there, but there's no video at all. And remove that real quick, and then I'll put it at this one. This one had it checked, and it shows it there. This is just a Sonic Generations video I was testing out. So yeah, it's showing there just fine. So make sure you have that checked for sure. Now here's where the fluctuating bitrate comes into play that I was talking about in the encoding settings over here. This is pretty much why it's at 1000. So set it to custom x264 encoding settings, and then have it CFR equals 5. This will tell it to pretty much fluctuate between whatever it needs to be whenever you're playing the game. So yeah, you really want to have that put in there. So that is my tutorial on how to record high quality video at 1080p 60 frames per second using low CPU usage and having a smaller file size using a variable bit rate. These are the settings that I use for my videos, and they look amazing to me. If you have a different CPU than what I have said earlier, you might want to play around with some of these settings depending on what you have. Even if you have the same CPU, you may have to still, this may not completely work for you. So I highly recommend you just kind of play around with it. This should work for most. So yeah, just kind of play around with it. I highly recommend like a minute test at most, just to make sure everything's running fine. So yeah, so you don't damage anything, because CPU usage here, if you notice this setting, So yeah, you don't want to, mess up your CPU there. So just try this out. What I have shown you should work for most, and you should be good. So yeah, thank you all for watching, and I'll catch y'all next time. Bye bye.
If you enjoyed that video, please be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. You have 5 seconds to comply. 4, 3, 2, 1.